Well, we are people who are being restored. And so I want you to think about that with me this morning as we are going to end up in the Gospel of John. But I don't know what a panda bear has to do with that, except that, isn't he cute? Can we just all I don't know if there's an animal in the wild that I would really like to snuggle up with. I think it'd be a panda bear. And I know one of the first, I was looking for my daughter, pillow pet. That was the word I was looking for. One of the first pillow pets we ever had was a ladybug, but the second one was a panda bear, right? We had panda. So pillow pet is like exactly what it says. You can have it like put together and it's like a little panda bear or ladybug or whatever, and then you open it up and it's a pillow. But it's just soft and cuddly and snuggly, and you just want to get close to it, right? So my question is, how many wild animals would you want to get close to and snuggle up with? Some of us have that same attitude towards God, right? Lion, Witch in the Wardrobe. Is he safe? and Beaver says, nobody ever said safe, but he's good, right? Aslan the lion. God is not safe, but he is good, and he wants us to draw near to him. Well, we were talking about Sabbath. We were talking about stopping, about resting, and one of the key things, one of the key reasons to stop is that we can be restored. And you might even be like, well, why do I need that? Well, let's just stop and think for a second. If you don't know that you need to be restored, we have professionals in town who can help you. And I don't have time, but I can refer you. Why do we need to be restored? Well, let's just look through what we were just singing. What we thought about as we were singing those words. In Genesis 1 and 2, God created the heavens and the earth. We just sang, Jesus, you spoke the world into being. And when God made it, was it okay? It was good. In fact, it was good and we were very good. And God, in the original creation, put you and I into the status of his image bearers. He made us to reflect who he is. And his perfect intention then was hijacked and broken. And we've been broken ever since. And I know there are some theologies out there that say, well, I accepted Jesus and now it's all fixed. I want you to look at your neighbor and as gently and kindly as you can say, you aren't quite fixed yet. Not completely, right? Can we be honest? We need to be fixed. I told Andrew if Jason was here, we'd have had a whole week-long conversation about going to the vet, but we're not, okay? We need to be restored. We are broken. Now, some of our brokenness is taken care of. We just sang that. We're going to celebrate that. That the penalty of brokenness from Genesis 3 is taken care of. In that we can be with God forever. It's available. But it's not fixed yet, amen? This is not heaven. As we were talking earlier, a couple of us starting to get jealous of those who are beating us there. Of those who have never been fast, but they got there first. What's on that deal? Because we live in a broken world, scarred by and cursed by sin. Oh, yeah, well, yeah. Oh, that's not very encouraging, Pastor. It is if you know the whole story, right? So in the garden, Adam and Eve make choices. Their next generation makes worse choices, and we've been getting that way ever since. None of us makes all the right choices. We're broken. Well, God didn't want it to stay that way, so in his intention then, he gives the rest of his instructions for how to get reconnected to him. And so for his people who are chosen in the book of Genesis, go back to chapter 15. I wasn't going to stop and do the whole thing, but he calls for himself a people that he still wanted to be with and have be with him. Calls them out from among all the brokenness. And he makes them special, and they are the vehicle through which the rest of the world, Genesis 15, that's when I am not in 17 with the covenant of the Hebrews, Genesis 15, through you all nations. God's plan was that all people would have access back into an unbroken relationship with him. And through the Hebrew people, he reveals that plan, which even as he's revealing its specifics, they are stomping underfoot and breaking again. That's the story. Just because it's available doesn't mean we're living it. And we need to stop and decide if we are going to reconnect with him according to his plan and get back in line with his intentions. If you have a bulletin, we'll get there. The first stop we need to make is to realize I'm not in line with the relationship God originally created, and I'm going to take opportunity to get in line with that. And then continue, as we will see when we get to John 15, which is where we're going to end this morning. It's a regular thing to stop, recognize our brokenness, and allow God to remove it. All right, there's the top half of your bulletin, but we're going to go a little slower through it. Let's talk about healing or restoration. One of the key thoughts that came from some of the books I've been reading about taking time to be with God, fellowshipping with him, connecting with him, taking Sabbath, whether that's an hour a day or whether it's a day a week. Yeah, I know, the Old Testament law, go back and watch the first 3 sermons. We are not under that. Which day? Well, here's how that works in real life, right? How many of you are doing something besides church today? Yeah. How many of you still need to mow the lawn? Because your neighbor didn't do it last week, even after that wonderful sermon. How many of you, this is our world, right? We live in a world that requires at least 5 days of our week. And then we've still got stuff we have to do that we don't get paid for, so that takes up time. And then we have stuff we want to do, so we go and we're going to get away, we're going to recreate. And again, you can go back a few weeks and see the difference in these words, but we're going to go recreation. Well, the word supposedly comes from recreation. But if we were recreated, when we were done recreating, we'd be refreshed and new and ready to go. And most of us, when we're done recreating, are exhausted and can't wait to get back to work to relax. We need to be recreated because we're broken and we're chasing after broken things. And so the better way to look at our time with God is to say, would you restore? Would you heal? You know, Jesus' favorite day of the week was the Sabbath. Now, in their day, that was the day they went to the synagogue. So I asked you about church today. I'm not talking about yesterday, what you did yesterday. We were all busy because we had to recreate, or we had to fix what we broke, or we had to whatever. Because we're in a broken world, and we're broken people. 2 days a week probably ain't enough. But on the Sabbath, there are 7 times of all Jesus' miracles, 7 times where his miracles, his healing, his restoration happens on the Sabbath. And interestingly to me, half of them at least are right in the face of the law keepers. To prove to them the point that it's not about the rule you're keeping, but it's about doing what God intended, which is bringing healing and restoration. So, ultimately, healing and restoration is John 19, verse 30. We sang it. We're going to look at it again. It'll come back up. It is finished upon the cross. Well, verse 28, again, we'll come back to it. Just if you want to flip there, you can, but you don't have to. Verse 28 says, Jesus knew his mission was completed. New Living Translation. It's not just that our sin was covered, it is finished, but what Jesus came to do was finished. He'd taught his disciples, he'd shown us how to live the way God intended, how to be stewards of our time, how to bring restoration and healing. I mean, if all Jesus needed to accomplish was payment for our sins, he could have just come down Easter weekend and saved 33 years of frustration with the knuckleheads that we are. But he came and lived among us so that we'd never be able to say to Jesus, well, you don't know my neighbor. You don't know my coworker. Oh, yeah, he does. Because we haven't changed that much in 2,000 years. We're still broken. So not only did he know his mission was finished, then he finished the separation between God and man forever, which is what we will celebrate at the end of the service. The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, Mark says. There's nothing about his birth. Jesus shows up, calls some disciples, and he ends up in Capernaum. That's Mark 1. And in Mark 1:21, he's in the synagogue. It's where you're supposed to be on the Sabbath, as long as it's no more than 3,000 meters away, because you can't walk more than a day's walk. So there had to be local synagogues. People want to fight against, there shouldn't be so many churches. Had to be in walking distance back in Jesus' day. I'm just saying. Some of y'all drive 20 miles. I'm grateful. That's great. But Jesus on the Sabbath is in the synagogue, and there's a man with an unclean spirit. And the man calls out to Jesus first. Well, the demons do. What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? And Jesus rebukes the demon, casts it out, and the man is healed. He's restored on the Sabbath. There's a little grumbling in the left-hand side of the synagogue. Oh, you can't. How dare he on the Sabbath? What does Jesus say about the Sabbath? It was made so man would have a rule to keep. No. It was made for the good of man. Man was not made for the good of the Sabbath. What is the good of man? Leaving this guy controlled by a demon or healing him? Well, that's a no-brainer. Somebody who's obviously ill, someone who's obviously under the control of the evil one, what better day to set them free, come back to that thought, than at the synagogue on the Sabbath? But that'll ruffle a few feathers, because they don't understand Sabbath. So Jesus leaves, if you're in Mark chapter 1, he leaves the synagogue. We've been there. He goes immediately across the street, closer than H Street from where I'm standing right now, from the synagogue of Capernaum to where the ruins of Peter's mother-in-law's house are. And she is ill with a fever. And he heals her. And as soon as he heals her, she gets up, feels better, so she starts serving a meal. Not only does Jesus break the Sabbath, now the lady that he healed is breaking the Sabbath. How dare he restore someone to health? Fix what ails her on a Sabbath. Because the Sabbath is about healing. I'm going to give you the other 5. Man with a withered hand, again, in the temple or in the tabernacle. Luke 13. A woman who is coming to worship, who has been crippled, doubled over, the word is. She has been twisted in her body for 18 long years, it says in Scripture. Mark Buchanan, in his book, in his commentary on this particular healing, says, how many of you know years of illness are longer than years of health? When you're struggling, the days are longer than when you're joyful. When you're feeling good, the days go quick. When you're not, you can't wait for them to be over. This woman had struggled for 18 years. And Jesus says to her, specifically regarding her illness, not, you are healed. Woman, you are free from your infirmity. I've set you free from that which has twisted you for 18 years. And guess who isn't happy? The people who are checking the boxes of what they didn't do on that day. You can read these stories for yourself. That's why I'm putting them up there. Luke 14, Jesus is at the house of a Pharisee on the Sabbath. Now, go back a couple weeks. We talked about servants. Luke 17. Which one of you, when you're ready to sit down to eat, tells his servant who's been out in the field all day, yeah, go ahead and sit down. Let's chow together. No, that's not how it works. Servant comes in from the field, then the servant serves the food. Once the servant's done with all his responsibilities, then the servant gets to eat. The Pharisee is throwing a party on the Sabbath, which I will guarantee you required his servants to serve. And the law given by Moses says, you shall do no work, neither shall your maidservant or your manservant, nor shall the foreigner among you. Good job, Pharisee. But what does Jesus do? This man with this condition, dropsy, as we would know it, inflammation and incapacitation due to circulation. That's probably not the clean medical definition, Doc, but what does Jesus do? It's interesting, it doesn't even tell us in chapter 14. What do you think Jesus did? I'd like to help you. Come back tomorrow. No, because it turns into a long lesson for the Pharisees about doing God's will if you have an ox that falls in a hole. Jesus heals the man on the Sabbath. John chapter 5. A man who's been crippled for 38 years, who has all the excuses. And Jesus asks him an important question that I'm going to ask you to think about for yourself. In your brokenness, do you want to stay broken or do you want to get healed? Jesus walks up to the man who's laying next to the pool of Bethesda and literally again, closer than the elementary school from the Temple Mount. A man sitting by a pool waiting for the water to stir, but I have nobody to put me in. I got all the excuses and it's just hopeless. And that man represents some of us. We're just going to stay in our brokenness because we got all the excuses why. And Jesus says, do you want to stay in your brokenness or do you want to get healed? And when the man says, I'm tired of being broken, he's healed. And he's healed in such a miraculous way. My physical therapy student's not here this morning. My OT person is here this morning. 38 years of muscle atrophy, and Jesus says, get up, take your bed, and walk. And he gets up, he rolls up his mat, and he walks away. And there's a little side point here that when Jesus heals, when Jesus restores, it's complete. He didn't have to go to physical therapy for 18 months and take cortisone shots. And we got to work on your flexibility again. Right? Story in Acts of Peter and John going by the temple, and there's a man begging alms, and they say, hey, we can't give you any money, but here, you get up and walk. And he jumps up and starts leaping and running around. You know the song. But it takes the decision to decide, God, I'm going to trust you to heal me. I'm going to trust you to fix me. I'm going to trust you to pay for my sin instead of just being comfortable and content where I am, and I'll just live it out and see how it works out in the end. There's a lot of us that live like that. There's a lot of us who live like that and we're afraid to come to Jesus. There's a lot of us who live like that after we've come to Jesus, and I guess this is just who I am. Someday I'll get to heaven and God will fix me. No, He wants to fix us now. One more miracle on the Sabbath. Man born blind. Tradition said that he was born blind because either he or his parents sinned. Well, it couldn't have been him. He was pre-born. And Jesus says that's not the point. The point of this man's brokenness is that God will get glory. When we come to God through Jesus Christ and He fixes us, it's not about us discovering a way out of our brokenness. It is completely trusting Him to heal. So let's talk about being realigned with God's intention that He had in Genesis 1. He created the man and the woman, male and female. He created them in His image. He created them, and He spent time with them, and He gave them a mission. He put them over creation. And He would be there to consult with. He would be there to encourage them. He would be there on a daily basis to tell them, this is how you should live. There's just one rule. And we know how that went. One rule was one too many. When God says, hey, I want you to Sabbath, we're like, yeah, that's optional. It's optional if you want to stay broken. Because the only place you're going to get healed and fixed and have your brokenness restored is in fellowship with God, who knows what's best for us and who has designed how we should live to know what's best for us. Let's stay in John's gospel. The man born blind immediately leads into this story where Jesus talks about His people. John 9 and 10, John 10 especially, is about God's flock. How you know you're God's flock. How you know that the first thing about you that needs to be fixed has been fixed is that you've been restored through the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross. My sheep know my voice, and I'm the gate that they come through. No one comes to the Father but by me, He says in a few chapters. Jesus is the good shepherd. This is this passage. He's comparing Israel at the time, but through time, all of us who call ourselves His, He's saying, here's what's true about you. What's true about you is that there's an enemy who wants to destroy you, but I am here to make sure that your life is restored and fixed. You don't know that translation. But He comes to give us life, and it is abundant. The reason it's abundant is because His joy fills us as we spend time connected with Him. John 15. Not only is He the shepherd and the gate, He's the vine. Okay, if you have your Bibles, turn to John 15. We're going to try and do this in less than 10 minutes. It's summarized in your bulletin. Jesus is the vine, and God is the one who is the keeper of the vine. Literally, the word there means the gardener. my wife approached me a couple weeks ago or 10 days ago or whatever and said, hey, are you going to spray all that water grass and stuff that's around my roses? And I said, well, I was going to clip off the roses, put a bucket over it, and then spray it with Roundup. I know, don't hate me, I use chemicals. You can't do that this time of year because I don't know squat about roses. She corrects me. You can't cut the roses off in the heat of the summer. According to Amy, okay? Bring that to her if you disagree. I was corrected. So the next day, she's out there ripping all the weeds out. The picture of the vine dresser is he's the one that makes sure the plant reaches its healthiest, fullest, most beautiful potential. That's who God is. And the plant, the core of it, the stem of it, the vine is Jesus. So God's intention is that Jesus, as the vine, completely fulfills and accomplishes what is best. And the way he does that is by pruning those who are near Jesus. Every branch that is in me does not bear fruit, he takes it away. Got a dead branch, gets cut off. In this story, in John 15, that dead branch goes into the fire. Branches that are bearing fruit don't get to go, finally made an apple, I'm okay. Got one grape. I mean, some of us live our Christian lives. We are the branches, and we're like, whew, that one time I finally had a grape, I'm good forever. That's not how fruit trees work. It's not how vines work. What does it say about the one bearing fruit? You get to coast the rest of your life. No. He's going to prune you. Now, here's what most Christians think. Hard times that come are from the enemy. It's just extremely possible that hard times that come to your life when you're with Jesus are pruning opportunities. That's why we're supposed to consider it all joy, according to James. That's why Paul says, hey, when you come to a tough time, persevere through it. We're not just like, oh, I'm a Christian now, I can recreate the rest of my life. No, I'm going to set myself up to be pruned so that I can bear more fruit, so that Jesus can be glorified and exalted to completeness of who he is because of our relationship with him. He's the vine, we're the branch. He's the vine, his Father is gardening and pruning him by pruning us. What is pruning? It's taking away what is unhealthy so that what is healthy grows even more. I'm not sure I want God doing that. I'm not sure I trust God to do that. I'm not sure I really want to be in line with his intention. I'd rather just live how I want to live. So I'm not going to get too close to this Jesus guy. The purpose of Sabbath, the purpose of stopping in our spiritual lives, one of those purposes is to say, God, is there something in my life that you need to get rid of? Is there anything you need to prune, God? I've been so busy chasing and getting and keeping and working. God, is there anything you don't really want me to do at this time? Is there anything you could do in my life, God, that would make me more fruitful? So we have to stop and ask, how healthy is my connection to the vine? How connected to Jesus am I? Remember, Jesus wants me to have a life that's full and full of His joy. And His joy comes into us because we're connected to Him like a branch on a vine. I'd rather just be content to complain about life circumstances until I get to heaven. It's not a very healthy looking vine. And if you'll let me really meddle, Christians who live like that are anti-gospel. If we as believers are complainers worse than anyone else in the world, I'm not saying we are. If we are, why would the world want Jesus? So God, prune those things. Prune my complaining spirit. Let's look at the benefits of being connected to Jesus here in John 15. And for some reason, I'm open to John 12 because my page is stuck. The one who produces fruit, He prunes so that they produce even more. You've already been pruned and purified by the message. You already belong to Jesus. So your fruit will be healthy. It won't be worthless and end up in the fire. The second thing, I'm the vine, you're the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them, they produce much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Well, I don't want to admit that, to be honest with you. I'd rather say Jesus and me can do everything, emphasis on me. I can do all things. Oh yeah, Jesus is involved. That's a misquote of that verse. Thank you. Verse 7, if you remain in me and my words remain in you, if you remain in me and my words remain in you, you may ask for anything you want and it'll be granted. Again, let's take it out of context. Well, I asked God once and He didn't give me what I wanted. If you remain in Him and His words are in you, it's not a magic incantation to get your will. It is a result of being pruned and being in line with His will. You are the branch. He's the gardener. I really liked that part of my life, yes, but it was keeping you from me, so I'm going to remove it for now. That's what God does. Sorry, flipping through these too quickly. We are disconnected from Jesus. We are dead to be thrown into the fire, and we are diseased. So we have to stop and reconnect with Him. Okay? When we do that, we become askers who receive because we're asking according to His will. Then he goes through this long passage here to just fill in your bulletin blanks. He goes through this whole thing of saying, look, I've loved you the same way the Father's loved me. Remain, allow me, connected. Remain in my love. Obey my commandments. You obey. If you obey them, you remain in my love. Just like I obey my Father's commandments and remain in His love. I've told you all these things so that you will be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow. NIV. You want a happier life, a joyful life? Obey Jesus. Stay connected to Jesus. Then His joy comes out of the branch, out of the stem and into the branch, out of the vine and into your heart. And you obey because you're His friends, not His servants. He doesn't call us slaves, He calls us friends. When we are connected to Him, we are more fruitful. We are more joyful. We receive what we ask for. We are forgiven, first of all. We are connected to the vine and not cast off into the fire. And then the last part of that is it flows out of us into love for others. I've told you all these things that you would love one another. Verse 12. There's so much more I want to tell you. He says in the next chapter, But I've told you all of this so that you would love one another. Verse 17, this is my commandment. Love one another. Oh, I'm trying to love my neighbor. Get connected to Jesus first. Then you will love your neighbor. So we have our 4 stair-step things up here that connect. Well, connect with God and with each other. But if you don't connect with God first, the rest of that staircase or stepping stones or whatever those things actually are, the 4 squares right here. If you don't connect to God first, if you're not connected to Jesus first, all of that crumbles. All of that is not lasting fruit. We'll talk about that as the fall goes on, probably. But as broken people, God has made it possible for us to be a part of His perfect intention from the beginning of creation, which we walked away from in Genesis 3 and ever since, and which Jesus came and showed us how to live differently, and which Jesus came and took care of the problem of our sin on the cross. John 19:28. Jesus, knowing that His mission was fulfilled, ESV says finished, cried out in a loud voice. It's in John 19 that we get these words. It is finished. Penalty for sin and the example of how to be a servant connected to God. Complete. We have His example and we have His provision. But we have to stop chasing everything else and say, God, I'm just a branch here. Finally made one grape. Could you do more in me and through me? Please?